There's a very curious phenomenon in calisthenics that most people don't know about at first, but if you've been training for a few months, you are probably starting to notice it. You see, after training for a while, you begin to realize that some exercises come easier to you than others. For example, you might find that push-ups and dips feel natural, but pull-ups are a real struggle. Or maybe you have started training different skills and find that the early front lever progressions are manageable, but planche progressions feel impossible. Sometimes you might even excel at a trick like the human flag, but struggle a lot with a strength-based handstand press. All these cases happen for the same reason. One way to classify exercises in calisthenics is by movement patterns, push or pull. And it's very common for people to naturally excel in one of those two patterns, which end up shaping their entire journey and progress in calisthenics. Today we are going to dive into why this happens, why it's important, what advantages or disadvantages it might bring depending on your case, how to adjust your training accordingly, and much more. But before we get into that, remember that you can use my code JERAI and Procis to get a 10% discount on supplements, healthy food and sports equipment, along with gifts based on your order amount and redeemable points for more rewards. Thank you for your support. First, let's define what we mean by push and pull movement patterns and what muscles are involved, focusing only on the upper body in this case. When we talk about a push pattern, we mean movements that push a free weight away from the torso when using weights, for example a bench press or military press. But since calisthenics uses fixed elements like the ground, bars or parallel bars, in this case a push movement refers to exercises where you are pushing away your body from these fixed surfaces. Examples include push-ups, dips, handstand push-ups and more. The main muscles used in pushing movements are the chest, anterior deltoid, and triceps, with some upper trapezius involvement in vertical push exercises. On the other hand, a pull pattern involves bringing free weights towards your torso, like rows or bicep curls. In calisthenics, since we work with fixed elements like bars, pulling exercises involve bringing your body toward these surfaces. Examples include pull-ups and Australian pull-ups. The main muscles involved in pulling movements are the lats, biceps, posterior deltoid, middle and lower trapezius, other upper back muscles, and sometimes the lower back and spinal erectors. In calisthenics, it's also important to consider different static and strength-based skills in relation to these movement patterns. To classify them, we need to analyze whether the force being applied in the movement is trying to push the torso away from the fixed element or pull it toward it. This tells us whether it's a push or pull exercise. For example, in a planche, the force you apply is pushing towards a handstand, similar to a press movement. So the planche is a push exercise. Meanwhile, in a front lever, the force you apply brings your body closer to the bar, like in front lever raises. That makes it a pulling exercise. Some cases are harder to classify due to the specific mechanics of each skill. For example, the back lever is a push movement, but because of the tucked position, it might not seem like it at first. The human flag has a mixed pattern. One arm pulls while the other pushes, but the main force comes from the pulling arm. The muscle up is mostly a pull movement, but it finishes with a push, though the pull phase is far more important. Other notable push exercises include the handstand and its variations, the V-sit and the impossible dip. Key pulling skills include Hefesto, one-arm pull-ups and the Victorian. Why is all of this important? If we analyze it, a calisthenics athlete's progress is heavily based on fundamental exercises like pull-ups, dips, push-ups, handstands and muscle-ups, including all their variations and progressions. If someone excels at pushing, they'll naturally progress faster in dips, push-ups, planche work and handstand. Meanwhile, someone with a pulling advantage will have an easier time with pull-ups, muscle-ups and the front lever. Usually, this isn't just a slight difference, it tends to be a noticeable gap. It's common to see athletes who are incredible at planche but struggle with the front lever or vice versa. Even in endurance competitions, you can clearly see who is stronger in pushing or pulling movements. In my case, I noticed early on that pushing movements were my strength. This allowed me to develop a good level in planche, reaching full planche, planche press and other difficult variations. But front lever has always been a challenge for me. I can barely hold it for a few seconds with questionable form. This difference also shows up in basic exercises. I've always found push workouts much easier and progressed quickly, while pulling workouts felt much harder. The same happened when I trained weighted calisthenics. I progressed well in weighted dips and even started doing weighted handstand push-ups, but my weighted pull-ups and muscle-ups lagged behind. So why does this happen? Why is this division so clear and why does it have such a big impact? To this day, there's no definitive answer. As far as I know, the most likely explanation is individual morphology, differences in body proportions that affect leverage efficiency. It seems that arm length relative to the torso, torso length relative to the legs, and the location of the body center of gravity all play a role in determining whether someone is naturally better at pushing or pulling. Some theories suggest that longer arms favor pushing, while shorter arms favor pulling. A long torso relative to the legs might also favor pulling. That seems to be the general idea, but I don't think the answers are entirely clear. It likely depends on many factors, making it hard to generalize. Muscle morphology and fiber composition might also influence this. Finally, your background before starting calisthenics could matter too. If you did push-ups as a kid but never did pull-ups, that early exposure might shape your strength tendencies. Now the big question, what should you do with this information? How should it affect your planning? First, identify your natural strengths. Are you better at pushing, pulling, or balanced in both? Then decide what you want to do with that knowledge. You could choose to maximize your pushing advantage, focusing on mastering planche or becoming an endurance beast in dips and push-ups while neglecting pull movements. Or you might prefer to balance yourself out, recognizing that you need to be more disciplined in your weaker movement patterns to create a well-rounded physique. Alternatively, you could aim to take advantage of your natural strengths while still training your weaker side, knowing that progress will be slower. Personally, I've always used my pushing advantage to progress quickly in planche, push-ups, dips and weighted dips while still training pulling movements. I just accept that pull exercises will be harder for me and require more effort, but I've never tried to specialize in front lever at the expense of my pushing skills, as I think that will be the least efficient approach for me. So my recommendation is to use this information to evaluate your own abilities and goals. Once you decide what you want to focus in, you can follow the EVO training programs in Calisthenics app, where we have an EVO push routine, a front lever training program, and 3 different planche programs you can check out. I hope this helps. Remember to like the video, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at @JerayAlonso, while also using my code JERAY on Prozis. See you in the next video.